Let's speak to Dr. Catherine Shoemaker, Senior Lecturer in American Studies at the United States Studies Center. Dr. Shoemaker, thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's kickstart with a big question. What do you make of Ms. Harris's choice? Is she going for a broad appeal over a swing state appeal?
I think that this is a choice that reflects a decision to run on policy and to run on a very clear progressive policy platform. Tim Walz has been the governor of Minnesota. Before that, he was a member of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he has a legislative record of achieving outcomes that protect workers, that offer more government support for children, for families, and to protect reproductive rights. So I think this is really very much a policy-based choice. And I think that what the Harris campaign is trying to do is to appeal to the Democratic base, those traditional Democratic voters, and get them to turn out.
Well, some say that Mr. Walz seems really like a regular guy and doesn't come across like a politician. Well, what do you think that he can bring to the table, and how can he support Ms. Harris if they win?
I think that the district that Tim Walz represents, which is actually the district that I grew up in a small city that's very similar to Mankato, which is where Tim Walz is from, this is an area that reflects a lot of the broader trends in the United States. So this is an area that's experienced deindustrialization, it's experienced agricultural decline. And this is a place where families have struggled, where people have struggled to find jobs where they can feed their families. And so I think that this was an intentional choice to choose someone who had a long career as a school teacher, a very middle-class job, who didn't seek out higher office immediately. He's somebody who's done a lot of public service. He was in the Army National Guard. And so I think that this was, again, a very intentional choice to choose someone who doesn't come from an elite university background. He's not coming from near the coast. He's someone who's from the heartland, who I think the Harris campaign thinks can appeal to ordinary people and to working class and middle class voters, ideally.
Well, I'm going to pick up on this very interesting point you just shared. You said that you grew up in the same district as Walz, and perhaps you could let us know what more can we know about him, because clearly the polls show that many may not know him personally. Then how then can Mr. Walz really appeal to the undecided voters?
So one of the big benefits of someone like Tim Walz is that he does have this experience as a school teacher. He's a very talented public speaker. He knows how to command a room. And he's quite personable, which to have 20 years in education, you really have to be able to get along with people. And I think that that's something that he brings to the table that makes him quite appealing. He's very popular in Minnesota. He's somebody who has, as I said, a record of legislative achievements, but who is also very much recognized for that. And so I think that the Harris campaign probably sees this as a positive, that the more people learn about him, the more, if they like his politics, that they will like him as a person, because he's quite affable. He's quite funny. He knows how to crack a joke. And so I think, he's sort of a good vibes candidate in that sense.
We're seeing memes and talks around online where they say he's a very daddy character in that sense, where relatability stands. American journalist E.J. Dionne said that Walz is a safe but exciting choice who has been able to stir real enthusiasm among younger Democrats. How do you see this balance working in favor of Harris-Walz team?
I think that what the Harris campaign needs to do is to get voters to turn out. I think that regardless of who her pick for VP was, she was not going to convert Trump voters to the Harris camp. The people who support Trump are about a third of the American population, and we know that they will turn out. They will vote for Donald Trump, kind of regardless of policy concerns. So what she needs here is for someone to bring energy, bring enthusiasm, to get voters who might otherwise be apathetic, who might not be that interested in voting, to feel that there is something to turn out for. And I think choosing someone like Walz, who has a very clear, strong legislative record, who has a platform, who can appeal to some of the big issues that will be on the ballot in November, seems like a consequential choice that I think potentially younger voters can find appealing and can rally around.
Well, speaking of records, Ms. Harris spoke about comparing the resumes of Walz and Vance. And in your opinion, I would like to hear, how does Walz compare to J.D. Vance as a running mate?
JD Vance is an interesting choice as a running mate because he is in, line for the presidency should they be elected and something happen to President Trump. He has a very thin legislative record. So he's only been in the US Senate since 2023. So he's only been a lawmaker for about a year and a half. Before that, he was, in private industry and in private equity, working in law. And I think someone like Tim Walz was in part chosen because he does have this long public service record, that he's worked in the public interest, both in terms of working in public schools for 20 years, but then also working his way up through the electoral system. So running for that district in southern Minnesota, where he unseated a Republican. It's a quite rural district that can lean conservative. So he managed to unseat a Republican incumbent. Spent some time in the U.S. House of Representatives, and now is a second-term governor of Minnesota. So he's been able to accrue the kind of record that people can look at and judge for themselves, whereas someone like J.D. Vance is a bit of a mystery in terms of his policy preferences. He's changed positions quite a lot before he was in office and then after. So I think that, there's a clear difference there in terms of, if voters want proof, right? If they want evidence, they want a record. Someone like Tim Walz is potentially appealing if they, again, like his politics.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this interview, giving us an insight, deeper insight perhaps on Tim Walz. That was Dr. Catherine Shoemaker, Senior Lecturer in American Studies at the United States Studies Center.